Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your unfiltered fit BFF, mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify their fitness journey so they can lose weight, regain their confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm your host, Nathalia Melo, and today I have an incredible guest that I actually met in a conference that I was in a few months ago, I believe. And you know when you know about the person, but you haven't put the name to the face. And it was just very chill guy. And then he gets on stage and he starts talking. And I'm like, oh, and he's sassy. Look at him. So it was very funny. So I have today Nick, who is the co-founder and CEO of RP Strength, which is a fitness tech company that has helped millions of people across the world reach their physique goals. And Nick is also a recent IFBB Pro Physique athlete and has helped coach top athletes, including Olympians, world record holders, CrossFit Games champions. And if I'm not mistaken, you have also coached Navy SEALs, haven't you, Nick?
Yeah, a little bit here and there. I've done some seminars with some folks that are getting ready to go out to BUD/S training and whatnot up near Annapolis. So very cool. Always awesome to work with folks like that.
I love it. So Nick, thank you for agreeing to be here in my podcast and to share your expertise. Every time we were talking before we went live, one thing that I love to do before I get a guest is to listen to a lot of the podcasts that they've done previously, so I can learn a little bit more about you aside from the just seeing Nick on stage speaking. And I had no idea you were a runner. Like, you don't strike me as the guy who is running 100 miles like you have.
Yeah, and then that was almost like a former life. But by the way, thank you for having me on the podcast. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
You were a runner, then you went to university into sports management, then you start powerlifting. When did RP Strength, or Renaissance periodization for most people out there, which I had to rehearse on how to say it like about 5 times before we got here.
Me too. Don't worry. Me too. You're not alone on that one.
Actually, let me ask another. How did the name came about? Who had the idea for the name?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. It was largely Dr. Mike. So Dr. Mike Israetel, the co-founder of RP with me. And there's sort of two parts to it. So, back in the day when we started, we've been around for like 12 years now, something like that. So first couple of years, it's like, whatever. But probably started to get a little more popular in something like 2014. So Renaissance, rebirth, what we want to do is, back then we saw a lot of stuff where people were just sort of doing stuff and there was no rhyme or reason to it. And so we thought, well, if we could start taking some evidence-based practices and putting it into fitness, people would very likely get better results. So that was like the Renaissance part of it, the rebirth of that into fitness. And then periodization is, long story short, you take one phase to set up the next one to be more successful. So like you would know this, you have an off season before you get into, quote unquote contest prep. Like that is essentially periodization. And then one other quick thing too. So Renaissance has a second meaning to it. I can't believe I didn't mention this right off the bat. There is a company called Renaissance Technologies in Long Island, and they are a hedge fund. But rather than just, hiring stockbrokers and things like that, they basically have a formula for how the markets work. And that's what we wanted to do, was like, we kind of knew there was a system. Like, if you want to lose weight, it's not that hard. It's not that complicated. You can essentially create a way that there are algorithms that can program it for you. Same with lifting. Like, we know what needs to be done. So what we wanted to do is, rather than just using random stuff, it's like we thought we could create algorithms and eventually program it so people couldn't afford coaching. There was still an affordable way to do it. So that was kind of the two-parter for Renaissance.
I love that. And I'm going to go straight into it because I think you really teed me up there perfectly. It's almost like we were rehearsing before. So with, doing things without rhyme and reasoning, and especially on the society that we have today, that where people are wanting like the quick fixes and the hacks. What is the hack that you have? How have you navigated this as a coach, as a business owner, with people always wanting the shortcut, the quickest way to get X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, it is kind of tough, but it's almost like if you know it and you're willing to have a longer term time horizon, you're just willing to put in the work, sort of gives you a pretty big advantage because you know that intuitively, just off the bat, most people are just going to fall off and they're not going to stick with it. And so something I always remind myself is like, the reason that I'm going to be so successful is because I have a long-term time horizon. I can use discipline. I can use delayed gratification. I can use that to my advantage because more and more people, it's like, as you get further along that scale of how long and how hard people are willing to work for, the vast majority of people are going to fall off. So to me, it's like, well, I hate the idea of being average. Actually, funny enough, I'm actually wearing a shirt that says "Average is the enemy" that was sent to me by some friends. But it's that same kind of perspective of, well, most people aren't willing to do this, so most people do want that quick fix, like you said. But like between you and me, like fuck that, we know that doesn't work. That's stupid. So you just go into it with the right mindset and the right perspective of, I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to take a long time, but I'm going to be successful in spite of that because I know that going into it. And usually when you know and you come in with the right framework and mindset, it just makes things easier. Because when things do take longer than you think, when things are harder than you think, it's like, oh, okay, I sort of expected this all along. Like, all right, cool, here we go.
So in a lot of the and you touched on it briefly here, but I've heard you repeat continuously in several of your appearances in the podcast that I listened that you didn't want to be average, you didn't want to be mediocre, and that's a mindset that I aligned with very much. And some people are a bit like kind of taken back whenever you say fuck being average and mediocre. Like, I just have one life. I'm going to live my best life. When was it for you that it clicked? Because you've been saying that is something that you've always been like that. But what was the moment that for you was like, fuck average?
Sometime in high school. Sometime in high school. Like, I think about this quite often. Why? Like, why is that? Because not everyone has it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It is sort of a burden, but it's the burden in the best possible way. Like, I kind of remind myself, well, not everyone, whatever, maybe it's genetics. I don't know exactly, right? It's probably a combination of things, but not everyone has that. So to me, it's like an honor. It is a burden that I'll happily wear and carry around. Like, hey, I have, the shoulders big enough to carry this burden because I don't want to be average. I don't want to be like everyone else. Like, I was meant to do great things. So what is it? And over time, you start to realize that it's not just like working on yourself, but it's also, how can I do great things that inevitably help more and more people? So like, that's kind of why you get into business, right? You want to help solve problems. You want to help people. And like, that's awesome because now we literally are like, maybe not me personally, but, through the company, and the company is sort of more important than any one person, especially myself. But like, now the company is helping literally millions of people a day because, we're being seen by millions of people on YouTube and across social media. Like, that's awesome. Why, if we are only have one life, like, why would we want to be average? I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get that mindset. I don't think I could sort of jive with people that don't understand that. And hey, like, no, not everyone's like that. Just like, I don't know, there's probably lots of things that people do better than I don't do. And I might not get their perspective. And maybe they are more like present and they can enjoy more of the moment. There's trade-offs to everything. And so they might not understand. I don't understand them a little bit. No big deal because to each their own.
So you mentioned that a lot of people don't understand, and a lot of people don't. You don't want to be around them. So, what are the strategies that you use? Obviously, I think that somebody like yourself, and I align very much with what you're saying. But what do you do apart from constantly having that internal motivation, which is going to be 90%? Like, what do you do from an environmental standpoint to make sure that you're continuously succeeding and not being average? Because, especially when you get to the exponential growth that RP Strength has had and the successes that you've had with, having the dream of always being a bodybuilder and becoming a professional bodybuilder, what do you do outside from just relying on your own internal motivation? I hate the word motivation, but let's go with it.
Sure. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. So, I mean, I can give an example. Like, I stopped competing for almost a decade, and that was because I saw some of my close friends around me. They were getting back into it. They were competing, and it kind of relit that spark that I had kind of deep down. And so it's like being around the right types of people. So like, that's one example right there. Another one more recently is, join like peer groups. So I'm in a Vistage group. It's just like a kind of business /CEO group, whatever you want to call it. But now every month I'm around people that are, CEOs or entrepreneurs or running their own businesses. And it took me a while to grasp and kind of figure out, but like listening to some of the things and suggestions that they had, and I would just take little nuggets. So, for example, one of the guys in my group like invited me. He's like, "Hey, I don't know if you know who John Gordon is, author, but he's like, hey, he's coming into Charlotte.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't happen all that often. So he's like, hey, like he threw it out to the whole group, and there's a handful of us that went. And I was like, well, now you're in a room with all these people. And I signed up for the second day as well. So like now I was around this even smaller group of people that are all similarly aligned. And after a while, you just start hearing, the same messages. Things just keep getting repeated, and it really just starts to sink in. It's one of those things where you might hear something once, and you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's cool, that's cool." And so you go to a conference like that, and then you leave, and then you kind of forget about it. And a month later, you're like, like shit, what were they talking about that thing? I remember it was nice,
Yeah.
but it made me feel good. But you kind of forget. Well, like now, you're just around more and more people like that, so it almost becomes like the standard. And like you look around, you see
Yeah.
other people doing really awesome, great things, and you're like, oh, okay, well, this is now more normal. This is the standard. Like you are trying to pursue excellence, and you're not alone doing it. That's really cool. So I've seen a ton of value in that. And now I'm kind of thinking like, well, I know where I'm at now. I know where I want to be. How do I get in groups that might be a couple, like a step ahead of me or two steps ahead of me? It's like, that's where I want to be more, because if you can start to get around more and more people like that, it kind of wears off. And there's some like good science to support that as well, especially when it comes to fitness. Like if you want to get in shape, you're probably not hanging around people that like smoke and drink all the time and eat junk food. Well, you're probably not going to be super successful if you do that.
Yeah, it's almost like the different rooms that you walk into, you keep on raising the ceiling of what you believe, like of what your vision of possibilities are, and that's something that I noticed with myself as well. Like before, whenever I start competing, I'm like, there is no way I can look like that. And then I went to my first camp with my old coaches, and I saw these people that were ripped, and I was like, well, maybe I can. And then a lot of them start to turn pro and get ready for pro shows. And I'm like, well, if they can, maybe I can too. And it starts to pile up.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you nailed it. Oh, how about this? Like we met at Raise the Bar. Like you go to a conference like that because you want to be around other people. I remind people of this. Like I was sitting in that room too, writing down notes from a lot of the speakers. Now, again, I didn't get to listen to every single speaker because, I had various stuff going on. But man, like when Luca got up there, and Luca was, I love listening to him talk. Like he's so energetic, so passionate. Like I love listening to that guy talk. It's the second time now I've heard him because I was at Raise the Bar last year. But to me, that, again, just like elevated my game a little bit, because now I'm texting him all the time. He's texting me. We're going back and forth on Instagram, and I, it's like, hey, I just went to this conference, or I'm like, hey, you've joined a mastermind before. What'd you get out of it? And he shares some insights, or he'll drop me something and be like, hey, like, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? Or I see that he's, read more books. I'm like, dang it. Like, okay, I gotta, hey, I gotta make sure I'm reading a bunch too to kind of keep up.
I gotta up my game.
Exactly. But like, that's how it works. It's peer pressure, but in the best sense. It's positive peer pressure.
I love that. And one thing that I heard you say as well, that I'm like, yes, that, because I have never seen anybody else say it with the way that lives rent free in my brain, which is that fitness, business, and personal finances all stem from the same fundamentals if you want to be successful. And I align with that so much. Can you explain to you what is your vision whenever you say that all these three things are basically, quote unquote, the same thing, but in just different areas? How do you see that apply to your life?
So success is universal, and it's really cool. And it like success leaves clues. It's universal. You start noticing what successful people do in their respective fields: psychology, business, personal finance, fitness. And it takes a while, but you start listening to them talk. You start listening to, their books, audiobooks, or you start reading their books. You start attending some of their courses, classes, lectures, whatever. And you just start to get some of these little nuggets. And so what I did is like I have to like find patterns, and like that's how I do things. Like if I want to go learn about a subject, I have to pick like 4, 5, 6 different books from like different people, read them all, make some notes, and like look for the overlapping trends. Like, oh, this guy said this. Oh, and so did he, and so did she. Oh, okay. All right. Well, enough people said it. This is probably, a quote unquote rule. So like that's how my brain operates. That's how I have to work. And I started noticing that, and I was like, oh, well, like this fitness person, right? So Annie Thorside or Rich Froning, whatever champions at their level, they said this. Oh my gosh, that sounds exactly like what this person said, who was, in the military or, studies positive psychology. Oh, that's how that works. So like that's where I first started going. And ultimately, like to me, like I love looking at or trying to model what other successful people do. And like that's what led me to write my book back in 2020 because I had nothing else to do because I was quarantined. It's like there are certain success habits that successful people share, common. So, real quick, it's like just work ethic. Huge. It's crazy. Internal locus of control. You just focus on the things you have some sort of control over, not necessarily external events. Having a positive mindset, being disciplined, and kind of having this greater purpose, learning from failure, and then the ability to like recharge because you can't just go nonstop. You have to be able to kind of recharge a little bit here and there. It's like those were my 7. And again, I wrote it a few years ago. Like now, have I evolved my thinking on it a little bit? Yes. I still think most of that stuff is, well, all of it's true, but now how I could add some little other elements of other things I've learned since then to it.
What would it be like in addition to the 7 with the time? Because I know that you have also gone through a lot of personal stuff, with your wife and things like that, which we don't necessarily have to discuss if you don't want to. But you had a lot of personal challenges. So how do you find that the 7 principles that you mentioned have evolved for Nick today?
Real quick, I mean, I'm happy to talk about my wife. So she was diagnosed with breast cancer early in 2020, right before COVID hit. So like she started going to chemo. I went to the very first treatment with her, and then I wasn't allowed to go to anything else. And by the way, like she's 99.99% healthy now. Like she's great.
Good.
Yeah, totally. So all good there. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. And
yeah,
I would say there's probably 2 really big things that would change since I wrote my book in 2020. So, 3.5, almost 4 years ago. One is I hadn't been introduced quite yet to the idea of like the slight edge. And all that means is like you just keep doing these little things day in and day out. And on any given day, they don't seem like much. Perfect for fitness, right? Like you just go and do a workout. It doesn't seem like that much, but you stack it and you stack it and you stack it and you stack it. A week later, month later, 6 months later, a year later. Well, gee whiz, if you stack enough of those workouts, like you're a different person. Now you do that for 3, 5, 10 years. Now it's like it's just part of your identity. You're a completely fundamentally different person. So that's the idea of the slight edge. I knew bits and pieces of it, but I had never been introduced to that concept, also known as like multiplier effect, compound effect, whatever it is, right? Which, guess what? Compound effect. What does that sound like? Compound interest. Same thing with personal finances, right? So you kind of get compounding gains over time if you do it long enough. So that would be one of the biggest ones. Number 2 is I've really been thinking about this a lot recently, and I think it's really fascinating. So essentially, the book that I wrote, funny enough, I look back and I'm like, it's all kind of internal focused, which is good, but now I feel like there's another level. There's another level to it. Maybe you have to start there. I think that's probably true. Once you start on yourself, you start learning more on personal growth, all this stuff. You're like, oh, okay. And then like you kind of get this better foundation built in yourself. And then I feel like the next level is then, okay, cool. Now I'm in a good spot. How do I now translate this and help as many other people as possible? Because it's cool to change yourself. And that's, again, I think where you have to start. But if I can then do more to give back and help other people in however that is, that people do it, man, that's like the next level. So like, that's not even something I touched on in that book because I don't think I really understood it at the time. Now I feel like I have this whole other perspective on things that is really fucking cool to me the more and more I think about it now.
Other than time, what do you think that has made you change your perspective? I mean, we grow, we evolve. Has there been any kind of like pivotal turning points that made you change your perspective a little bit, or just life happening?
I think it's a combination. I think it is maturing, getting older, more perspective, and then just, going through some like business stuff at RP and kind of coming to the realization that like, well, it's not all about me. Actually, if I can do something to help everyone else, and that means like internal at RP, but also external to like all of our, customers and people that we could potentially give information to, man, that's stop being a young, dumb, selfish person that is more egocentric, just about me. Now, how do I make it more and more and more about other people is going to have the greatest impact? Yeah, it might help me, which is cool, but it's even cooler than to go help as many other people as possible. So that's, I don't know, man, a little bit of maturity, a little bit of, I guess, going through some
Hard knocks,
experiences.
like life of hard knocks.
Kind of, yeah. And I mean, the whole talk that I did at Raise the Bar was really all about like kind of mistakes that I've made along the way. And that helps set the stage for having this different perspective and different view that it has been really cool to see. And it's probably here in like the last 3 to 6 months that a lot of this stuff has really started to kick in. And by the way, it's also been supported by the Vistage group that I'm in, the people that I'm around, hanging out with them more and more and more, watching how they do things. Because man, like all I do is work remote. So sometimes I lose a little bit of that, but I go to these guys' businesses. I see how they lead. I see the way that their people love and adore them. And I'm just like, this is crazy. This is awesome. Like, how can I do more of that? And that's, just, again, it's more of a recent thing, but I'm happy, fortunate, grateful to be around good people that can help show me the way.
Yeah, I think that the thing that you're describing here is the leadership, because starting a business is one thing. Any monkey can start a business, but maintaining a business and being a leader to your business and managing people within the business that come to it with, and I'm not talking people, just the clients that we serve, but also our team members. I mean, they have their own personal lives, their own personal battles that they're going on. And we like as entrepreneurs, as very type A people, we have that agenda in our minds of where we are, where we want to go. And it's like, off we go. But along the way, there are going to be people that are going to be part of our journeys, maybe from beginning to end, or if there is an end, beginning to middle, that we are going to need to slow down a little bit and be there for them. What has been your biggest lesson from that you have learned from the peer group that you are in leadership, that it was, because I think a lot of the things you're describing is leadership. So what would you say that has been your biggest lesson from these people?
I think you nailed it. That's a much better, way better way to describe what I was rambling on about. You said it in one word: leadership. Again, I think part of it, you have to start with yourself. You've got to kind of become the leader of your own life first, and then you're able to go out and better lead other people. I'm not sure you can do it the other way. Maybe you can. I don't know how effective you would be. Maybe not quite as effective. So the biggest thing that I've learned really is people have to know that you actually give a crap about them.
Give a shit.
Yes, that's how I sum it up in my head. And so we just hired a new person at RP not that long ago, and this individual's worked in some very, very big companies before. And I was like, hey man, just can you tell me some stories? Because I've really only ever known RP. I've never worked in like typical corporate culture. So I don't have that perspective. Right. So I can hear someone talk about it. It won't really sink in because I'm like, I don't know. I've never been around that. I don't really know. But I wanted to try to gain that perspective. I want to tell me some stories. What was cool? What was not? And my big takeaway at the end of this call, and we spent like an hour on the phone, was Zoom, whatever, potato.
Yeah.
Is people have to know that you give a shit about them. That word for word. That was my takeaway. Exactly what you said. And when that happens, when you actually do care about people, that's when some cool changes, cool things can happen.
I love that. And, I find that the thing that you mentioned about learning about yourself and learning about, because even within leadership, you have to learn the things that you're willing to put up with and the things that you're not, especially as you're dealing with people. There are some hard stops and boundaries that you do have to set and your non-negotiables. And in your talk at Raise the Bar, you mentioned that the growth of RP strength started to happen even more rapidly whenever you guys burn the boat in the sense of stop being, vanilla on your social media platforms and really being yourselves and really going to town with the things that are true for you in your heart. What pushed you guys to, stop being all right, guys, today we are going to talk about calories in and calories out and be like, fuck this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like what was the turning point and why?
Yeah, I was completely fucking wrong on this.
What were you wrong?
Yep, I was wrong on being exactly what you said, being very, very vanilla. Hey, we're not here to rock the boat. We don't want to say controversial stuff. We don't want to turn Dr. Mike's humor and jokes and crazy analogies loose. We got to be a little more watered down. I was completely fucking wrong. Hence me swearing here. I would not have sworn a few years ago. I'd have been like, no, whatever. I have to be more professional. And whatever, you do have to kind of be professional in some sense. But, and I think social media has kind of led to this where people just get bored of that shit. They're like, I can go listen to that anywhere. That's not exciting, because what works, if we go back to like what really works on all this stuff, it's the basics. Well, guess what? If you're just saying the basics, people get bored with that after a while. So what does it take? It takes a little bit of personality and pizzazz, and the gift of the gab is what I call, what Dr. Mike has, and he's got it. He does. He has it. It's a skill. He's amazing.
He's hilarious.
People love him for it. People love him because he's funny. He's super smart, super smart. But he can drop these crazy analogies, and he'll go off in these wild tangents, and you're laughing, you're engaged, you're like, I can't believe this guy's saying this, but oh my gosh, it's so funny. Oh, I see how that relates. Oh, by the way, he just taught me like 3 to 5 things. And to me, that was like the biggest thing. And what did it go back to? It just went like, we started, you remember what social media was like in 2020. We were just getting attacked even for being vanilla. And I'm like, well, if we're going to be attacked for being vanilla, this sucks. At least if you're going to be vanilla, you don't get attacked, right? That's kind of the thinking. Well, like, if you're going to get attacked for being vanilla too, well, fuck that. You might as well be who you really are. And so like now, Mike joins me on the RP podcast, and man, we just have fun with it. We riff, we make jokes, sexual innuendo, self-deprecating humor. It's fun because that's how we talk when it's just him and I. Now, again, he knows this. There's a handful of words he can't actually say, but and he knows that, and he doesn't. But I'm like, otherwise, just be you, man. And that's what people like. It's the authenticity. That's what people like and support, right? It's not, people don't really like businesses, so to say. They like the people behind them. And it's like, oh, okay, let's go lean into that more. And, Mike, you're going to wear your Crocs, and you're going to wear your clothes from Walmart, and, you're going to make all these jokes. And I don't know, some of that seems a little silly to me. But in the same regard, people love it because that's just who he is. And that's what people want on social media these days. Because I think early on in social media, you could get away with being vanilla because it's like, whatever, everyone is just getting into it and all that. But then you just get this watered down message over and over and over and over. People don't want that anymore. People want to be entertained. They want to relate to a specific person and a personality and who they are, their little, flair that they've got. So that's been the biggest change for us, I think.
Well, what was the moment? What was the moment? Like, did you guys have a meeting and, Nick was overthrown, or you came and you're like, hey guys, I think we need to change directions and go this way? Was there and I love that you acknowledged that you were wrong, which, it's something that I find a lot of people in leadership, they don't take personal responsibility for their bad decisions. And I think that can be incredibly detrimental to the team.
Luckily, I've kind of leaned more that way, almost naturally, almost instinctively, of I don't care if I have the right answer. I don't care if someone else on my team has it. All I care about is that we have the right answer or the better answer at the time. And in fact, it's even better if other people have it. Because I remember early on when I was kind of tasked with doing all the business stuff myself, and I'm just I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Can I hire someone that's really good at this stuff, or various things like that? Because I'm I can't possibly know everything. I know a couple things pretty well, I think, but I don't know email marketing automation stuff. I don't know what this stuff is. I'm like, can I just pay someone to do it? There's stuff like that early on. But I don't remember an exact moment. It was more like a gradual shift where it's almost like Mike would say some stuff, people would laugh, they would think it was funny, and I was like, I would almost be sitting there in the corner, like tensed up, like, oh boy, oh, here we go. And then people loved it, and I'm like, oh, all right. And then I would go to him, Mike, be careful. And I'll just keep telling him that.
And he's like, fuck off. He's like, fuck off.
Yeah, right. Something like that. And then he does it again, and people react the same way. And so it was like I can't pinpoint a specific moment, really. It was like this gradual shift. And then, finally, realize just how much people like him and the personality, and just going, you know what? Hey, man, go for it. Let's see, I don't know, a year and a half ago.
Oh, so it's recent. Okay. So now let's kind of go back to the talk about success, because I think that everybody wants to be successful. Oh, I want to be successful. And I think that there is a problem that people, one, don't have clarity on success is.
Yeah.
And I know that you worked in New York with a lot of, very successful people in their business, and you were in Manhattan, if I'm correct.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate? Because even as a coach, one thing that I see a lot of times is that you have these incredibly successful women in their careers, and they keep on beating themselves up and saying that they suck whenever it comes to their fitness. And so how did you navigate, if you ever came across this on your, whenever you're working with people that were like career successful, but you couldn't get them to save a life, to stay consistent the same way that they were with their career with the fitness? What would that conversation look like with your client?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's an interesting one. So, a lot of people say they want to be successful in a certain endeavor. First question is, there's a couple ways we can go with this, but this is what I'm thinking. My instinct is want to be, do you really want to be successful in this? Because here's what it's going to take. And then you lay out, okay, you've got to do X, Y, Z. Do you really want to do this? Now, they might say yes, because they don't realize how hard it is. But a lot of people, it's like the proverbial, everyone wants to be a millionaire, everyone wants six-pack abs, etc. Okay, well, now let's explain what it actually takes, and let's ask that question again. Do you really want this? And most people, if they're being honest, will then lower their hand and be like, nope, actually, you know what? Nah, I didn't really want it that bad. So that, to me, is like one of the first things you have to get through to them. Setting expectations. What's it really going to take? All right. Are you really in this for the long haul? And guess what? If you don't want it, that's fine. So get that figured out, because there's a spectrum here too of what does success look like? You mentioned that earlier. Phenomenal point. You have to kind of map that out, because guess what? For a busy professional, like 80% of their focus is going to go towards, their business or their career. So you go, okay, now maybe 80% is too much. I don't know. Well, now we got to go, okay, well, like how much do you need for whatever family, whatever, and then how much do you have for fitness, right? Because you kind of have to weigh all of these things. So I'm making up these numbers here. Someone says, all right, I got 10% I can give to fitness. You're like, okay, cool. Well, now we know. Now we can deal with that. All right, cool. So like, here's what I need you to do. I just need you to meal prep a couple times a week and like have 1 or 2 meals a day prepared for you. We know you're not going to be perfect, but that's a good start. And guess what? I know that you can then get to the gym 3 times a week for 30 minutes. And that's like your 10%. Okay. That's a fine start, because we just have to get trade-offs established for people. Like, hey, you care more about this right now and a little bit less about this. That's okay. Maybe they'll get to a point where their career is a little bit less important. They've got more free time. Now, again, let's making these numbers up here. That 80% career goes down to like 50%. And now their ability to do fitness goes from 10 to, 30, 40, something like that. And then you go, all right, cool. We can work with that. So now instead of 3 times a week at 30 minutes, well, maybe they're going 4 or 5 times a week for an hour. Well, you can probably expect you're going to get a lot better results now. So to me, it's all about just managing that expectations and setting trade-offs for people. Because a lot of people don't really realize that there's trade-offs involved. Like, oh, well, like I want to
Yeah.
be super, super successful. Oh, and I also want, to have this great body. And I also want to have time to, do stuff with my kids and family. And it's like, okay, well, great. We want everything. Everyone wants everything all the time. Cool. All right. You're a 6-year-old. Oh, let's be an
Yeah.
adult. Let's actually establish trade-offs and be like, I'm okay. A little bit less here right now, a little bit more here right now. And again, most people, that's going to change over time. I mean, I can give an example. Like, in order for me to pursue being an IFBB Pro, well, I had to give up a lot of stuff. Again, I knew I was
Mm-hmm.
willing to do that for a certain amount of time, just like when you had to compete. Well, like, there were trade-offs involved. You probably weren't out
Mm-hmm.
doing as much fun stuff when you were in contest prep, like
Mm-mm.
that's just kind of how it works. And you just have to accept those trade-offs.
I love that. And what kind of, and as somebody who has accomplished a lot of goals that you have set for yourself, I'm sure there have been failures along the way. We can
Oh,
touch on
yeah.
that in a little bit, but, and you guys are on social media, especially YouTube. And I find that people on YouTube are absolute fucking dicks. Excuse my French. Like, I find like the commenters on YouTube, like probably the most vile out of, I think, all the platforms that I'm in. So
Yeah.
what role do you think that social media plays listen, this is not social media bash hour. It's just, a lot of the personalities of the younger generation and even like older generation is being shaped by what they see on social media. So talking about expectations and talking about the trade-offs with all the get rich quick things on Instagram and whatever, and six-pack abs in 3 days. What kind of role do you think social media is playing on people's expectation, and how, as a coach, we can be more clear that social media reality it's maybe a bit skewed?
Yeah. It's like it kind of social media sort of rewards the outliers or the crazy stuff. And that's why you see
Mm-hmm.
people doing all these crazy outlandish things to get their little like 15 seconds of fame. Yeah, I just kind of think like, well, what's next? What's after that? What do you do, right? If you're someone that has to do these
Mm-hmm.
crazy elaborate things to get attention in this attention economy, look, what do you do after that? I don't know, I'm just making up an
Mm-hmm.
example. You like light yourself on fire to get attention, and that goes viral. Like, okay,
I think they've done
doesn't
that already. I think they've done that already.
it's God, I hope not, but maybe they have. But it's like, what do you possibly do after that to upstage that? Because you have to
Mm-hmm.
do something bigger and more outrageous now. So it's like maybe going back to the fundamentals: is that sustainable? Flip side,
Mm-hmm.
it's not nearly as exciting. Just start putting out some good basic information. And you just keep doing that over and over and over. Now, again, there's more to it than that, of
Mm-hmm.
course. You've got to have a little flair and a little personality, and you'll learn a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff over time. But so, like, for our YouTube channel, for the most part, like, most of our views come from like back videos, people watching stuff because it's more
Mm-hmm.
evergreen. The content kind of lives forever
Mm-hmm.
because you see a lot of
Yeah.
people that do current event stuff. And it's like, well, like 2 days, 3 days later, people don't really care about that stuff. So it's like you have to always be inventing stuff if you're on that more current event. It just doesn't seem as sustainable because people aren't going to go back a year from now and watch something that happened a year ago. Like, people don't really care. People have short attention span.
Mm-hmm.
But if people want to learn, a video from a couple of years ago is still relevant, it's still valuable. So like that's
Mm-hmm.
how we've approached it. Again, it goes back to
Mm-hmm.
having a longer term time horizon and being willing to, have that slight edge and just keep doing those little things because, in the Raise the Bar talk that I shared, I mean, for a while, like we didn't have much traction on YouTube, but it slowly started building, accumulating social proof, more and more collab opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. And then those opportunities just get bigger and bigger and bigger along the way. And, you just learn a lot over time and just adapt and keep going, figure stuff out along the way and try to constantly be adapting to what works, what doesn't, and not getting too down when some of the stuff doesn't work because inevitably that's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I love whenever you said like rewarding outlandish, and it kind of reminds me, I had a call with a lady yesterday that wanted to work with us, and she wanted me to give an absolute guarantee that she was going to get rid of like this pockets of fat in her legs, and like she wanted me to give guarantees because somebody else had told her that they were, and I think that fitness professionals don't understand how detrimental these promises are, because people start to lose faith in themselves. Like they think that they are the problem, in a sense of, oh, you are going to lose 15 pounds in 2 weeks. And, if you have a group of 1,000 people, yeah, maybe 10 will do it. What about the other 990? Nobody's talking about, but the 990 are feeling like they're a failure. So as a business, how are you dealing with this obsession for guarantees, especially in the fitness space, that it is not something that you can guarantee? Not even like plastic surgeons, they're chopping you up, guarantee results. So how are you guys handling that?
Yeah. I think there's really only one good way to handle it, in my opinion. Just be real with people. I remember having this conversation with this guy that just kept emailing me. And it was like a friend of someone that I knew. And he's like, well, I'm interested, but I don't know, like, can you give me a guarantee? Why don't you have a guarantee on your site? Well, why don't you have a money back guarantee? I was like, sir, I can guarantee that our philosophy and stuff works. I can guarantee that part. I cannot guarantee your particular personality, work ethic, etc. I cannot guarantee that you will not stuff your face full of Oreos or whatever it is. Go out drinking with your buddies a few times a week. I cannot guarantee that. Having said that, I've learned a little bit more about marketing stuff, because we used to have a free trial on our app. Well, I think the free trial in fitness is not so great, because we want to go after people that are more serious. Guess what, motherfucker? There is no free trial. You're in or you're out, because the people that want the free trial, they're not going to stick with it. They want to stick their toe in the water to see what it's like. Guess what? That's fine. Go somewhere else. Go to Jenny Craig or something like that. I don't think Jenny Craig exists anymore. I think they went out of business. But so we've changed our stance on that a little bit, where we got rid of that free trial. But so having said all that, we do actually have a money back guarantee with our apps, because we're like, hey, we're very confident that if you get in there, and because we're marketing more towards people that are more serious, we know we're filtering out a good number of people right up front. It's like, hey, we're just for people that are serious about it. Yeah, when you're serious about results, come to us. Awesome. So we do have that. Inevitably some people will get in and they might not like something. They might not like the UI, UX, whatever. And we're happy to get that feedback and always trying to improve upon it. But the number of people that do that is incredibly small, and it keeps going down over time. So that tells me that our messaging and what we're doing and saying is working, because we do have that. Again, you kind of want to give people a reason to sign up so they feel more comfortable, because we don't have that free trial. So it's like, hey, you got to commit up front. You got to show us that you got some skin in the game. Can you do that? Cool. Because guess what? If you do, if we know you're going to come in, you're more likely to be successful. You're more likely to stick to it. But for whatever reason, if you don't like something, hey, whatever, we'll give you a refund. No worries.
Yeah. And I think that the main point, I think, of the question that I'm asking is how, because we have a lot of listeners that wouldn't necessarily be coaches, they are the consumer of the coach's information. And I find that all these messages that many fitness professionals are putting out there, that is like, oh, I can guarantee that, if you have a diastasis recti that is 10 finger wide, you're going to be able to shrink your belly in like a month. Like you can't. And then you let that person down, and the person think that they are the problem. And then the ethical coaches are left with to pick up the backlash of that unethical behavior. So I saw you, I don't know if it was you. I think you shared it yesterday, a quote, and I'm going to read the quote, and I'm going to ask you why you shared that quote and if you have any experiences as to why. So the quote was, the number one underlying reason why the 5% succeed, be it in fitness or in sports, business, or any other field for that matter, is because of this. They are willing to do more than what's being asked. And that's not Nick's quote, FYI. It was a quote that he shared on his Instagram. So what have been the things that you feel like you have done more than what had been asked, that you can track back to your success with all the endeavors that you have gone after?
So real quick, so we've been talking, about like culture and leadership. So this is one where immediately jumps to top of mind here. Well, like if you want to work at RP, you got to have this philosophy. Like you're not willing to you don't want to just like do the bare minimum. It's like, no, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
You're raising your hand as like, hey, I want to sign, I want to do more. Like, what else can I do? That's the
Mm-hmm.
mindset. That's kind of like the mantra that we want. What else can I do? It's not the bare minimum. It's what can I do to go above and beyond? That's what I like. Those are the types of people that I want to be around. So that to me is sort of what that quote stands for. Or again,
Mm-hmm.
just not being average, because average people want to do the average amount or not even the
Mm-hmm.
average amount. I
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily interested in that. I'm okay. I
Mm-hmm.
want to go above and beyond. And I think about this quite often. If like RP didn't exist and I was starting a fitness company tomorrow, I would absolutely coach people and I would offer high ticket coaching because I would do a fucking amazing job with like 10, 15, maybe 20 people a month. And I would just deliver such good service to them. It would be amazing. And that's how I would do it.
Mm-hmm.
And like that,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, that's kind of what that means to me.
And to kind of like circle back, I think that a lot of people don't understand, and I think you're going to be aligned with this. So, but bear with me, I might rumble a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people don't understand the consequences of the quick reward mindset that our current societal environment is setting today. They think that it's just about, oh, it's just about the fitness and it's just about, getting from A to B. But as a business owner, I'm also seeing a lot of that even on my hiring process, people that literally have just started, doing their job 3 days ago, wanting to make 150K a year with zero experience, with no education, zero experience, is like that entitlement that they can skip the necessary steps and the person that you become in order to earn that reward. So how do you navigate that as a leader? Because we are hiring the younger generation that has been raised with the quick return
Mm-hmm.
at their fingertips.
Got two interesting perspectives on this. One is we hire mostly people that are into fitness.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have people that are interested in fitness, I feel like they have a better intuitive understanding of this because you don't
Mm-hmm.
just get immediate results in fitness. Fitness
Mm-hmm.
results are earned, not given, right? So I think that helps filter out some folks. And then two, we've got a pretty big ecosystem of people that know who we are, watch our stuff, etc. And so I feel like when we do need to go recruit and hire people, whoa, that's the first place we go to because we want these people that watch our stuff that kind of understand our philosophy going in. And that's probably going to help with the culture. So a couple people in like marketing that we've hired in the past year were some of our biggest fans. And so we
Mm-hmm.
knew a little bit about who they were, what they stand for. And man, they're like two of the hardest working dudes I've ever seen. So that to me, I don't know if that would apply to everyone necessarily. So maybe we're a bit of an outlier here, but we mostly hire
Mm-hmm.
like off of that and or referrals of people that already work for us. Because when you hire referrals,
Mm-hmm.
like there's peer pressure in two places on the person coming in because they want to make that person look good and on the person that's already here. Because if you're already here and you recommend a
Mm-hmm.
dud, ooh, boy, that's going to be a black eye, right? Like that's not going to be a good look for
Yeah.
you. So you're more apt to probably go above and beyond with that person to like make sure, reach out, ask them questions. Hey, how you doing? Anything I can help you with? Again, that goes back to the positive peer pressure in a good way.
And as a dad, how do you because I know that you have two kids as well, and that's kind of because I find that a lot of the things that got us here might have been some hustle that we had to do at a younger age. Like I moved to the US when I was 20 with nothing. And, I feel very fortunate that I can provide my kids with things that I didn't have the opportunity to have. And it's always that like internal battle of being like, I want to
Right.
give my kids what I didn't have, but I also don't want to raise assholes, entitled assholes. How, how do you do that?
You are speaking my language. This is like an internal battle and dialogue that I have with myself almost every single day, and probably
Mm-hmm.
with my wife frequently as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the right answer is. I
Mm-hmm.
think we're just going to do our best to And again, we get feedback that our kids are pretty nice. They tend to, but it's like,
Yeah.
I don't think I could allow that entitlement because it is so anti me that it just rubs me the wrong way when I see it. And I gotta act upon it
Uh-huh.
when I do see it. If they ever, if they, let's say they say
Uh-huh.
something, I'm like, excuse me? What did you just say?
Mm-hmm.
Like making them
Mm-hmm.
realize because they're totally growing up with stuff I never thought I would ever have access to. That's
Mm-hmm.
one thing. And I do have to say, my wife and I used to go round and round a little bit for this as to like what the right approach was. And I was totally, 95% on the spectrum of like tough love versus like being too nice. I was way over here on the tough love part. And my wife, I,
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's naturally or maybe as a result of me being too much of that tough love, was like way over on the other side. And so it's
Yeah.
like this constant
Same
battle where we're
here.
trying to kind of walk, we're both trying to get more towards the middle, but we kind of both tend to lean that way. But I will say again, is when I was just on the more internal focus part, I was more on that tough love part, the discipline,
Mm-hmm.
all that. And
Yeah.
now as I step back and I learn and I see the leadership part and how do you really lead people better and effectively, that's just more naturally bringing me more on her side. And I kind of was joking with her. I think it
Mm-hmm.
was just last night. I kind of made that joke, and I'm like, "Hey, like I think you were more right than I was. It just took me a while to kind of realize it."
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's a battle that I have every day. I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, same. I'm like, oh God, I want to give my kids nice things, but we took my kids skiing in the French Alps. Like my
Oh
son
wow,
is
that's
literally like
awesome.
in the French Alps. Like we're having this amazing vacation. He's like, I hate snow. I'm like, excuse me. Like, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like we'll be on a
yeah,
boat, and then he's like, "Ugh, the wind is too hard. Swim, like go ahead and swim.
yeah. So, question for you, because yeah, I'm right there with
Sure.
you. But it's one of those things where you can't blame him, right? Because he doesn't necessarily
Yeah,
know what it's. He's just he didn't do anything about it. He
that's
just
all he
happens to be
knows.
there, right? Yeah, exactly. That's all he knows. And it's like, how do you get them to sort of experience some of the struggles that you had so they can appreciate it more? But like, no matter where people are in life, even if they've, got the best of the best of the best, like there's just that natural tendency to want to complain a little bit or like kind of point out the flaws, that like negativity bias. It's just funny how that
Yeah,
works, right? Because like, you see it from like where you came from, or like I came from like lower middle class. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up, anything like that. So I know that. So I do appreciate it a lot more. And then where my kids
mm-hmm.
start from, they still complain about things. Well, people are always going to complain. It doesn't really matter the level that they're
Yeah,
at. So it's like, how do you get them to appreciate the other things? I don't know. Hopefully, give them some
yeah.
perspective and try to teach them the right stuff. And
I'm winging it. Like honestly, like parenthood for me is kind of like because with everything else, like with fitness, you have almost like that immediate kind of vision, whether it's happening or not. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't take years. After a month, you know that if you're losing body fat or not. In business, if you're doing better, you know that you're doing better by looking at your numbers, looking at your retention, and all of that. With parenthood, I guess I'm going to have to wait until they're like 18, 20 and don't become dicks. Like, you don't know.
how old are your kids?
They're 6 and 7, about to be 8 and 7. They're like back
Okay.
to back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
So, Nick, what does success look like for you? Like Nick that I'm speaking to right now, what does success look like for you?
How can I best help impact positively the greatest number of people that I can?
Mm-hmm.
That includes myself, that includes my family. It also includes all of our internal RP folks. And then probably the greatest opportunity, right, is external to RP folks. So how do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, I've got a pretty good vision in my mind, and I've gotten a lot more clarity on that here the last few months, but I sort of know what it's going to
Mm-hmm.
look like in my
Why?
head.
Why the last few months?
All this learning, reading, attending stuff, being around people that are performing at high levels, kind of serving the greatest number of people. It all is kind of showing the way and then reinforcing things as I kind of sketch them out, talk with people,
Mm-hmm.
it reaffirms it, and I'm like, okay, I'm pretty confident that I'm on the right track. So I feel good.
I love that. I love that. All right. So I have a kind of fun question that I normally have like a few fun questions that I ask our guests at the end of it. So what's your biggest pet peeve?
I think we covered it. Just the entitlement. People that aren't willing to work hard. It rubs me the wrong way. That's non-negotiable.
Any funny pet peeves? For me, it's people that do stuff slowly. Oh, it kills me. Like walk slowly, drive slowly, like speak slowly. I'm like,
Oh my gosh. Talk about some self-awareness that I've picked up on recently. I have noticed that when people want to say stuff and they're kind of dragging it out and taking a while to say it, in my head, I'm already at the answer. And I'm like, I kind of want to jump. I want to jump in and I want to like finish the thought for them. Or like, oh, hey, like, by the way, I can save you 5 minutes. I know where you're going with this. Is that correct? But I catch myself and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, Nick, shut up. You are not a good listener. You need to get better at that. Just shut up. I hear you. I hear you on that one. I couldn't agree more. I'm just like, I got to work on this because I have the internal dialogue. I'm like, oh, don't say that out loud. Okay. Okay. Yep. All right. Yep. Okay. Just
Are
going
you
to listen.
ADHD?
I mean, no,
Okay.
but like, does it, it's a little hard for me to focus here and there. Sometimes it depends. Never had any issues in school or anything like that. But it's more of just like what you said, the type A personality of just like, let's go, 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 go.
Yeah.
Let's get shit done. Well,
Uh-huh.
if you can save me 5 minutes with this conversation, like I already know where you're going with it. Like let's just get to the end point. But it's a struggle.
I hear you. And I'm going to just say one thing because is your wife like very chill, calm, cool, and collected? Or is she's also like go, 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 go?
Okay, so I think that one has changed because of her going through COVID year and cancer and all that. So
Uh-huh.
she used to make me look chill, like she was very type A, go getter. And I think she has mellowed out with that life perspective, right? When things happen. So she has more mellowed out to where she's more a little bit the other way. And I'm kind of still more on that other side. I don't know if that's a good way to answer that, but
Yeah. And the reason I ask is because like my husband would be very chill, like very chill.
yeah.
Like if there is like, I don't know, a grenade that comes, he's like, okay, everybody, let's gather our thoughts. And I'm like, everybody better. I'm that person. So whenever you're talking about like saving 5 minutes, if we're going to a red light and there's like 5 cars on this side and 1 car on this side, Roger, like he just parks behind the 5 cars. And I'm like, what are you doing? The other way. And he's like, how much time is that going to save? I'm like, I don't know, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. That's enough time.
But it's a game. Like that's how I view it. Of course, I'm going to hop over into the other lane. And then like when that lane starts going slower and then all these people pass me, and I'm like, I get a little pissed off and I'm like, oh, come on, I made the wrong choice. So I hear you on that. And I've actually like in my own head, I kind of remind myself, I'm like, just chill. It doesn't matter. I don't have to be in quote unquote the winning lane. It doesn't really matter. It's going to only get me 10,
but
20,
it does
30
matter
seconds.
though.
It does matter a little bit. And like, I'm always going to try to hop over a little bit, but I hear you on all that. That's really funny, man. It seems like our personalities are very much.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's funny. And I think that that's good that he's like chill because otherwise there wouldn't be enough oxygen in the room if I had two of them.
Totally. Yep.
Self-awareness, my friend, is a beautiful thing. All right, Nick, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Can you tell our listeners where they can find more about you, get your book, learn more about your next endeavors? Maybe if there is a part 2 of your book, I don't know, just the mic is yours.
Yeah. At nick.shaw.rp on Instagram is probably the best spot. And like in the link in bio, you can check out whether you want to check out some resources from RP or, go Amazon, get my book Fit for Success. That's probably the best spot. And then, if folks are into fitness, want to learn some cool stuff, I would say check out Renaissance Periodization YouTube channel. Just search, Dr. Mike, something related to lifting. and you'll probably find it. He's a funny guy. Would highly encourage everyone to do that. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You probably get some good laughs out of it.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Nick. And I will see you around, maybe in the events around the world. Bye-bye.
Yeah. I'm sure we will. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment or voice message at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on Instagram and let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. As for today, this is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.